All right, folks, we are live. Today, John Parker is going to be running a discussion. The topic today is the Supreme Court leak. Uh-oh. Abortion overturned? What does it all mean? That's what we're going to be discussing on Call-In today. I hope you guys call in. If you haven't downloaded the new Call-In app or checked out the website, just go to callin.com on your browser or download the app. You do have to download the app to be able to call in. They are doing some updates to the website, so you're probably gonna be able to do this simply from your computer eventually here. But yeah, they're putting a lot of money into updates here. So we're going to be seeing a lot rolling out. Make sure you guys on YouTube smash a like when you get into the room. This is going to be a wild topic. What do you guys think of what's going on with this leak? We're gonna get into all the details and cover everything today. I'm gonna give you guys this. Copy that. You can call in and have your say on the new Call-In app. I gave you guys the link there. For anyone that's watching this stream after on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and drop a comment. I do encourage you to come and join us for our discussions. If you don't want to join us on Call-In, at least join us on Discord. That's where the Penguin community hangs out. We hang out every day on the Discord server. And of course, we have one show every day on the Call-In app. This Friday, the 13th, tickets go on sale for Penn Jillette and Lawrence Krauss live in Toronto. So if you're in the Toronto area, make sure you grab your tickets for that event. It's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to working with Penn Jillette. He's a living hero of mine. There's going to be a VIP option where you can get some merch or a book signed at the event. But yes, tickets go on sale this Friday. Penn Jillette and Lawrence Krauss. August 9th in Toronto. Yeah, it's going to be a fun event. John will be going live in just a minute here. So I hope you guys enjoy this discussion. And please do come and call in. Want to hear from you.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to the War of Ideas. A little bit of a different time this time around, but today we are talking about the Supreme Court leak. If anybody on God's green earth has not heard about this yet, um, the Supreme Court was considering a case known as Dobbs v Jackson, which could have overruled Roe v. Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood. Um, and that was on their docket for sometime this summer. But last week, if I do recall, the opinion written by Justice Alito was leaked to the public. It's a 98-page opinion. It's a absolute full-throated barn burner where Alito dissects Roe v. Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood and resoundingly overturns them, putting the issue of abortion back to the states. This is the first time in Supreme Court history that an opinion or a vote has leaked. Um, I think that there have been some minor leaks of the past on cases that didn't matter so much, but this is a full-on reveal of what the Supreme Court is thinking. This opinion is not in effect as of now, but it has the votes to go forward as is. Seemingly, we don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do. Um, we'll see. But yeah, that's what we're talking about today. I figured I'd start by reading the opinion, and the opinion is 98 pages, so we're not going to get through all of it. I figured I'd just read it until someone wants to hop in and have a comment. But as much as we're talking, we kind of talked about abortion on the first episode of the show, and I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit. But I would like to try to focus this show less on the morality and the philosophy of abortion itself, more on the legal side of things, as well as what it means for the country that this was leaked for the first time ever, why it might have been leaked. My initial thought is there was some liberal law clerk who wanted to try to intimidate the justices because there's a lot of that. There's protests going on in front of Justice's house. But, there's also been rumors that conservative clerk has leaked this. We have some Big Lebowski. Not the first time the original Roe v. Wade was leaked too. Oh, well, that's news to me. I was under a false impression. Let me check on that. Big Lebowski might have corrected me in real time here. Let's find out. Um, Potentially the opinion was leaked. I don't think the vote was. Let me see. Ba-ba-ba. Brief. Okay. Maybe you're right. Maybe the original Roe v. Wade was leaked. Huh. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look into that. Regardless, Supreme Court leaks are not like normal. It's a pretty big deal. So I figured we'd talk about it. So thanks, Lebowski, for correcting me on that. Um, I kn- so first time in a while, at least. It's a pretty big deal. So we're gonna start. I'm gonna read through this opinion. Um, please call in if you guys have any thoughts. But this type of thing, this type of reckless disregard for institutional norms, for the proper separation of powers. Just all that stuff is really troubling to me personally. I know I sound very stodgy, but yeah, I'm going to start reading this opinion, and please, guys, jump in, and I'll commentate as well if I have any thoughts on the opinion itself. So, Justice Alito delivered the opinion of the court. That alone is kind of interesting. I would have expected they would either have had Justice Thomas do it because he's the most senior, or is Thomas the most senior? I would have thought they'd have either Justice Thomas do it or ACB because she's a woman and it looks better if a woman writes this opinion, optics wise. Um, but no, Justice Alito wrote it, and he wrote it in a very Scalia-ish style, I would say. When I was reading this, it read a lot. When I read this the first time a week ago, it read a lot like a Scalia opinion. Um, Lady Dakini says, which is a greater threat to our democracy, this leak or January 6th? That's a good question. Um, Maybe it's the conservative in me. I I don't know. If the January 6th, it depends on how much of a. So the answer to that question, Lady Dakini, is basically how much of a chance there really was of the people in January 6th actually succeeding in like killing senators or like stopping the vote. To me, I think the odds of that were excessively minor. I thought that their plan was doomed for the start, and there was never a real threat to how that was going to move forward. I think the senators were always going to vote the same way. I don't think that they were going to really stop democracy for any extended period of time. I think that it was kind of doomed from the start. And therefore, while the optics are bad and it's really, kind of an egregious thing, I don't see it as much of a threat. With this, I can see, I don't know if this will happen. Hopefully, the justices stick by their principles and vote the way they wanted to vote. But, there's protests in front of their houses. I saw this tweet, and this sounds fake because I can't remember who said it, but it was this tweet putting forward a thought experiment, which is like, look, it's like a trolley problem. Kill one justice and then stop the decision that causes like millions of unsafe abortions and like say and kills millions of mothers. So like that'd be I'm sure that moral calculus is going through some more radical people's heads. Kill one justice to save a whole bunch of unwanting mothers. Um, and that's some conjecture, sure, but as far as what's more likely to actually stop a governmental process, I would say this. I would say that this has more of a chance. I think they have more of a chance of intimidating justices into changing their votes than the January 6th rioters ever really had of stopping a presidential certification. So that's what I'd say. But then again, the Supreme Court isn't really a democratic institution by design, so I don't know. It kind of depends on your phrasing. Uh, Regardless, all of it is very bad, and all of it kind of reveals a lack of institutional respect and trust. That's kind of really bad for the country. Cardinal Nature says this leak is way worse. January 6th, not at all. I mean, yeah, I see it. I don't really think January 6th was ever going to succeed. I think this very well could, even though both are obviously egregious. But let's get into the opinion. So, Justice Alito delivered the opinion of the court. Abortion presents a profound moral issue on which Americans hold sharply convicting views. Understatement of the year. Some believe fervently that a human person comes into being at conception and that abortion ends an innocent life. Others feel just as strongly that any regulation of abortion invades a woman's right to control her own body and prevents a woman from achieving full equality. Still others in a third group think that abortion should be allowed under some but not all circumstances, and those within this group hold a variety of views about a particular restrictions that should be imposed. For the first 185 years after the adoption of the Constitution, each state was permitted to address this issue in accordance with the views of its citizens. Then, in 1973, this court decided Roe v. Wade. Even though the Constitution makes no mention of abortion, the court held that it confers a broad right to obtain one. It did not claim that American law or the common law had ever recognized such a right, and its survey of history ranged from the constitutionally irrelevant, e.g., its discussion of abortion and antiquity, meaning like ancient history, which is not part of the canon that Supreme Court justices usually look at, to plainly incorrect, e.g., its assertion that abortion was never a crime under common law. Not true. After cataloging a wealth of other information having no bearing on the meaning of the Constitution, the opinion concluded with a numbered set of rules, much like those that might be found in a statute enacted by the legislature. Okay, so as you can see with this introduction, Alito's kind of already tearing it apart. But he does something that a lot of people who are pissed off about Roe v. Wade don't understand. You've heard the polling data that 70% of 70% of people agree with Roe v. Wade. That's true, but other polling shows that most people don't actually know what Roe v. Wade does. Most people think that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that abortion is just going to be criminalized nationally. That's not true, and you see it here. Alito talks about how multiple different groups of people have different opinions on this, and that throughout history, we've left it up to the states because that's what this opinion, if enacted, will do. It'll just give it back to the states for individual state legislatures to work out. You also hear how he's talking about, he says that there's no mention in the Constitution. So the reason that matters is that there's two types of rights, explicit and implicit in constitutional law. Some of you might know this, some of you might not. So number one is if it's written in the Constitution, it's a right. But there's also rights that are less implicit. This comes from the Ninth Amendment, which talks about how the Bill of Rights is non-exhaustive. There are rights that aren't listed in the Constitution, and usually where they look for these implicit rights, this is where judicial philosophy comes in. Originalists like Alito or Thomas, or Scalia for that matter, look for implicit, if you believe that there's an implicit right in a part of the Constitution, you have to look through the history of law and see if that implicit right was generally understood. If not, it's not there, because otherwise you run the risk of making something up. So that's why Alito is talking about common law never recognizing a right to an abortion. The idea that abortion is an implicit right implies that the people writing the 14th and the Fourth Amendments that Roe is based on, when those amendments were written, it was understood to protect abortion. This is not the case. Therefore, Alito says that it's not an implicit right. We got some more activity in the chat. Zealot Zoe. Zealot Zoe, one of our fellow hosts with a superhero avatar, she says it may have been deranged, would have done had they reached the legislatures. I mean, maybe if they reached the legislators, but I just think the odds of that are incredibly low. I don't think that they really would have reached the legislators. Even if they did, I think that I mean, this is kind of conjecture, but I think these guys were just kind of goofy and kind of pissed off. I very much doubt any one of them had murderous intent. And third of all, I think the odds of them actually reading the legislatures went incredibly low. And also, fourth, if you want to get really morbid, even if they had killed some of the legislatures, I still think that this would have been certified. I genuinely think even if the January 6th rioters were able to reach the legislators, even if they had the murderous intent, even if they had the ability to kill some legislators, I still think that the vote would have came out the same way. So while still absolutely immoral, absolutely egregious, horrible time for the country, as far as threatening the actual functioning of our government, I don't see that much of a threat. Zoe goes on to say there was a real threat to the lives of congressmen. That is clear. That is not clear to me. And even if there was, it's not a threat to the function necessarily. The reason there was a threat is not because of how murderous the crowd as a whole was, but because it was a serious security breach at the center of our federal government, and we don't know what certain individuals, any of whom were probably deranged. Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with a lot of that. I'm just, no one was after the legislature says carnal nature. And yeah, there were security failures at the Capitol that really need looking into. There's some weird stuff about Capitol Police getting out of the way. That's been like really quiet. We really need to look into how the hell that even happened, because that should not be able to happen. Mitch McConnell has already stated that this will allow for a federal abortion ban, says Big Lebowski. Yes, it will allow for the Congress to deliberate over whether they want to make that law. Sure. It does allow for the Congress to make the decision, or the Congress to like have debate over it, because it's no longer protected as a constitutional right. But Roe v. Wade itself doesn't criminalize abortion. Like if you think that a nationwide abortion ban is going to happen in our Congress automatically, like I don't know what world you're living in. We have a very partisan, very deadlocked Congress. I think that the odds of getting a filibuster-proof majority are basically slim to none. So while yes, it does open the door for Congress to create abortion legislation, it does not automatically do it. Roe simply puts it back in the hands of the states. Um, Cardinal, how on earth can you know that no one, not one person at Crown had the intent to murder? Zealot is asking Cardinal. Um, Nobody can read their hearts. Lebowski asks, does the Constitution specifically mention the right to concealed carry? Terrible arguments on Alito's part. No, Lebowski, you're missing the point. Here's the difference. Because the right to concealed carry would be an implicit right. And how do you know that it's an implicit right without making stuff up? This is Alito's judicial philosophy. When the Second Amendment was written, would it have been understood that you are allowed to carry a gun without people necessarily knowing that you have a gun on you? Through historical analysis, through the written records that we have of the founders at the time, through the general customs of the time, you could see that yes, this was understood to be something that people did at the time that the Second Amendment was written, and therefore is seen as an implicitly protected, as an implicit right protected by the Second Amendment. However, in the case of abortion, no such historical context exists, and that's why it's not an implicit right. So that's the difference, Lebowski. Um, We all know that they were very close to Zealot Zoe. I don't know. You should listen to Zoe's episode on this. I'm just saying that as far as actually stopping the function of the institution, I think that people have a lot more chance of threatening one of the Supreme Court justices into submission as opposed to killing enough legislatures to prevent the vote indefinitely. I don't. I don't see it. Um, Penguin asked me if I want a nationwide ban. Um, Probably, yeah. Yes, but that's kind of besides the point of the law here. Lady Dakini totally disagrees with Zoe. She says the leak was far more dangerous for the court members than January 6th. Agreed. Agreed. Okay. There's some more arguments, but nothing substantive. Kind of repeats. All right, I'm gonna go through another paragraph here, and then we're gonna have Sheila, who's in the caller queue, who are gonna add her in. So I'm gonna finish here. So, under this scheme, Alito goes on to say that under the scheme set forward by Roe, each trimester of pregnancy was regulated differently, but the most critical line was drawn roughly at the end of the second trimester, which at the time corresponded to a point at which a fetus was thought to achieve viability, i.e., the ability to survive outside the womb. Although the court acknowledged that states had a legitimate interest in protecting potential life, quote unquote, it found that this interest could not justify any restriction on pre-viability abortions. The court did not explain the basis for this line, and even abortion supporters have found it hard to defend Roe's reasoning. See, this is the point. This is why Roe v. Wade is a bad case. It's complete judicial activism. The court just simply declares when the state's interest is legitimately or sufficiently compelling or not. They say it's at viability. There's no legal basis for this. Hell, I would argue that there's not a lot of philosophical basis for this either. The court just made it up because they felt like it. This is why Roe is a bad case. And Alito says it. They didn't explain the basis for this. There's nothing in the law about viability. They mentioned quickening, but quickening has nothing to do with viability. Quickening was only used before we had the science to understand what was going on in the womb. Quickening, by the way, is the moment where you can feel the baby moving around in the womb. One prominent constitutional scholar wrote that he would vote for a statute very much like the one the court ended up drafting if he were a legislator, but his assessment of Roe was memorable and brutal. Roe was, quote, not constitutional law, quote, at all, and gave almost no sense of obligation to try to be. All right, so that's where Alito is at. We'll cut it there. We're gonna go to Sheila, like I said. Sheila, you're up. How you doing?
Great. Glad to
Um,
be back. I've gotten some repeated invites to come to the Pangburn, to return to the Pangburn Hangout. So hi, everyone. Thank you for
love to
inviting
have
me
you.
back to comment on this. This is very energizing for me because it seems a little bit more technical and less heated. The arguments that I'm hearing right now from, say, your opponents, I heard that, okay, if Roe doesn't go our way, we need to abolish the courts. And this is so similar to,
I've heard
like,
this.
abolish the police because we don't like some of the police. Some of the police were bad, so abolish all cops are bad. So we don't like this ruling, so abolish the entire Department of Justice, the entire third branch of government, the entire court system. And I think that most reasonable people who rely on a criminal justice system to capture murderers and put away really bad people who have done bad things that violate our laws really need
Mm-hmm.
the court system that way. I mean, it's certainly an imperfect institution. It does need
Yeah.
some help, and things do need some reform, but getting rid of all of it is not the answer. But that's what I'm
Right.
hearing consistently from the left. And the left, their ideas have picked up steam. They've got a grip on the party right now. They're going to lose their ass, hopefully, after this midterm.
Yeah, it's
And
not
but
looking
then
good.
we'll be back in the hands. It's presumed. It may not happen. Okay, yes, I'll leave that open. But in the event that they do lose, they are going to be cranky, and we're going to return to a place where they're more or less, they're going to hybrid tribalism, and they're going to behave like they did after Trump was elected in 2016. That was the beginning of this. So, regardless of which way the ruling goes, even if it is kicked to the states, we're going to see this kind of resiliency in the left, as long as they're allowed to take foreign money and get
Hold
foreign
on.
sympathetic
You lost me
support.
there.
Okay, they're going
Walk
to
me
get
through that
foreign
real quick. You
sympathetic
lost me.
support from people like Soros, but they're also going to get foreign support from, the Chinese Communist Party, and they're going to get it from Venezuela and other coordinating ideologues.
To what end?
To what end? Well, they want dominance. They want political dominance, and they
Well, I
want
believe
radical
that
change.
both parties want political dominance. What leads you to believe that they're taking money from George Soros to CCP in Venezuela? Venezuela has no money. Venezuela is there. I mean, that might not be true. Maybe the government does, but
They
people in
have
the street are
oil
eating
and they
dogs.
trade it.
Okay,
They
so
have,
what leads you to
you
believe
know
that they're
what? The
taking money
top.
from them?
Okay, the people don't have any money, but the top
Yes,
always has money.
right.
That's what you need to remember.
But yeah, sure. But the more important question is, why do you think that the DNC is taking money from these organizations and
They're not
governments?
taking money directly. They're wearing the mask of the DNC. They're wearing a Democratic mask, but they're funded. Their ideas, their think tanks, their leftist socialist mores in the ultra left districts like Seattle and Western Washington and San Francisco and places where the CCP has bought up a lot of land to launder their crazy
Okay,
money.